Hello and welcome to the Categorically Romance podcast. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Bree.
And today is our February Books Club for 2023. And we are joined by a guest reader. We have with us Christina. Christina, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. You sent us an email talking about your new introduction to category romance. So you're a fairly new reader to category. So can you give us the quick version of your journey to category romance?
Yeah, I mean, like most people, I had seen the Harlequin books all my life in the bookstores, and my mother used to read them. And it just sort of happened accidentally. I was at a book sale and they had a number of these books available. I picked some up and brought them home, and they sat literally for months. And I was in a book slump, and I just thought I'll just pick one of these up, and fell in love. It was a book by Abby Green, and it was a Cinderella trope. And I thought, this is great. How did I not know about this? And then frantically started looking for anything I could find about category romance and what that was, and stumbled on Sarah's YouTube channel, and from there the podcast, and the rest is history.
Well, we are so glad to have you here as a category romance reader.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's exciting to have somebody to talk to about it who's, as enamored with category as you two are. I don't hear a lot about it on the regular, YouTube channels and reviewers. I don't think there's enough talk about these books. So yeah, I'm happy to be amongst people who really understand it, certainly understand it more than myself, and are, love it as much.
Yeah, I love that your first was an Abby Green, because my first was an Abby Green. And I was like, oh, she's good. Okay, I'm kind of hooked on this. Because my first, I didn't realize I was reading Harlequin, but my first was a heartwarming. Like, I started with heartwarming before I really knew what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And so, like, once Sarah and I became close friends, like, I picked up, intentionally an Abby, this Presents. I was like, okay, I'm going to pick up Presents. And I started with Abby Green. And I was like, oh, I have read a Harlequin already, but it was totally different than this. It was heartwarming.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, Abby's so good. She's so good.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, she was getting praise sung on our 200th episode recording. I think it was Danny Collins used one of her books as like a template when writing, when trying to sell for the first time. So yeah, Abby's great at reeling people in.
Yeah.
Well, this month, our theme for Books Club was romantic suspense. So we encouraged people to read from the romantic suspense line or the intrigue line, or if you were doing some throwbacks, there's Bombshell and there's the Nocturnes that got a little romantic suspensey. And then there were some other silhouette ones, Bree, that you had mentioned.
Yeah, I was hoping that I could find a suspenseful silhouette shadows on my shelf, but I didn't actually, and I probably could have just did some more digging, but the ones that I was looking at the most felt more horror-ish. So I was like, you know what? We'll save this for another theme, later on down the line. So, but I mean, they also had Harlequin Gothic. So, I mean, you guys could have interpreted this however you saw fit. So, and of course, Thule and Entangled have lines as well that have some romantic suspense under them as well. Like Thule, I was thinking one that I wanted to read, Heather Novak has a Grim Reaper series that's coming out now, and it's actually they have audiobooks for those. The heroine's like a Grim Reaper, and it's suspenseful and romantic comedy-ish at the same time. So there's tons out there, I think, in the world of category that has some suspense. If intrigue is too much or romantic suspense, the line is if it's too daunting, I think. So I'm excited to see what you two read.
First, I wanted to talk, how do we feel about romantic suspense, just general overall? Christina, why don't you tell us how you feel about the genre?
Yeah, interestingly enough, there was a time where it was all I read. Karen Robards, Kat Martin did a few back in the day. Trying to think of the others, but I used to read them a lot and then just stopped reading them. I don't know why. I guess I just moved on to another part of romance, but I've always loved it. I'm also a huge, action movie fan, James Bond. It's a great combination of getting that piece plus the romance. I really, I appreciate that you guys did this month, because I went back to it after so many years. And as I was reading, I thought, why did I stop reading this particular subgenre? So it's really nice. It felt like coming home to read it again.
So did you read a lot of like mysteries growing up, or have you just always been like an action movie fan?
Yeah, I did. Robert Ludlum, all of those big thriller, spy thriller, I read all of them. I read The Bourne Identity long before the movies came out. So I've always been, I really always loved that part of that genre. So yeah, when I discovered that you can get a couple plus because in The Bourne Identity in the books, like they don't stay together long, like she eventually dies. You're like, what?
Yes. Obviously no happy ending there.
Right.
Right. And I remember even, The Walking Dead, it took me a while to get into, and so, everybody was watching it and they said, give it a try. And I did, and I liked it. And there was Daryl and Beth, and I thought, oh, this is great.
Oh God, I love Daryl.
Then they killed Beth, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm out.
Yeah.
It's over for me. And so I always I need that romance part. And once you take it out, I sort of lose interest a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is really interesting. That plays into the theory that I have about romantic suspense readers.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun stuff to talk about here.
Yes.
Well, for myself, I don't reach for romantic suspense very often. However, when I do find myself reading an intrigue, I usually like it, and then I've read one and a little more than a half romantic suspense line books, specifically from Harlequin Romantic Suspense, and there's something about it that just doesn't quite catch me as a reader, which is nothing wrong with the line. It's just me as a reader, and I'm interested to get into it with you to try and decode this. How do you feel about the genre, Brie?
Well, okay, I have to ask. So, going with my theory, because I know you're a sci-fi reader. Like, did you read mystery at all growing up too? Like, or what? No.
No, not at all.
Yeah, like I didn't. Okay, that's my theory, guys. So like I didn't. I was a kid in the '90s, so like I didn't read like Boxcar Children and Nancy Drew. Like I had friends who read it because like their moms passed it down to them, but like I wasn't reading those. The only I can't remember the name of that show on Nickelodeon, but there was like a little like mystery solver girl, and she would write in her composition book. And then I remember they had like the Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, but those were like the only kind of mystery shows that I ever really got into. So I think that like if you didn't grow up really into mysteries like that, I'm like, maybe that's why I struggle with picking this up. Like I was a horror fan growing up, and like you don't really see tons of like horror and romance. But I'm a lot like you, Aaron. Like if I sit down and read one, like if I'm in the mood for romantic suspense and I sit down with the book, typically I walk away from it and I really enjoy the reading experience. But if I pick one up on a whim and I'm not really in that headspace, it's more of it's not you, it's me. Like I shouldn't have picked this book up because I just wasn't. I'm not a true crime person. It's
Same.
I feel like it's weird because Aaron and you and I have talked about this. Like I can do paranormal, I can do horror. True crime I can't really do because it's kind of scary to me because it's like real life. And I'm not the biggest like action movie person. So I have a weird relationship with it, but I want to gravitate more to the genre. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think for me, it is the high stakes and less the crime aspect.
Okay.
I love the adrenaline of it. I love that two people are now, their survival is dependent on this thing that's after them or forcing them to be on the run, or that's pushing them together. I'm reading a lot of post-apocalyptic romance right now, dystopian romance, and I think it's the same sort of thing where they're forced together, they're put in this really high stress situation, and it's forcing these two people together. I get, in a way, it's forced proximity on steroids, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's my theory, anyways.
Yeah, I think for me, like when I finished reading the book that I read for our chat, we last month we focused on Kiss. Like, so we picked a specific line and we read from the Kiss line. And I was telling Aaron, I was like, oh man, like Kiss is like fun and flirty, and like we're in the weeds and seeds of romantic suspense here. And you're right. Like, it is the forced proximity. It is the danger that, like, I guess in my case, really, it is like the trauma that both of these characters have experienced and are experiencing that like brings them together. But I think I miss the fun and flirty, and I feel like for some reason, I feel like there's something that I don't get with the characters. Like, there's some type of connection that I don't get with romantic suspense, because so much of the focus is on, we have to survive what's going on. Like, somebody's messing
Right.
with us and we don't know who it is. And I just feel like there's a little piece like that leads to that connection that I typically get in regular contemporary romance that I don't get with romantic suspense. Like, we don't get to see them like, I want to when I finish a book, I want to feel like, okay, these two people are going to stay together. And I feel like in just regular contemporary romance or whatever whatever it is, like, you get that because you're seeing them just like spend time together and be cute. Whereas when there's like a danger element, the focus is so much on the survival or solving the mystery that I'm not getting that like cutesy part.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I sound awful. Like, listen, guys, I have such a respect for the genre and I want to love it, but I think that's the piece that's missing for me. So I don't know. Somebody else take it.
Yeah, I totally feel you there. But it's interesting though, because I found that I prefer intrigue to romantic suspense, as far as the Harlequin lines.
Okay, elaborate.
Because in intrigue, it's 90% about the mystery.
Yes.
There are usually really high stakes. I have to shout out Julianne Lindsay here. She writes just white knuckle suspense like all through those books, and you are just like hyperventilating by the end because you feel like you haven't been able to breathe the whole book.
Right.
And so it's like, oh my gosh, it's over, and these two can actually get time to enjoy each other now, and that's fine, and that's great, love it. But with romantic suspense, it's trying to give you some of that cutesy stuff, I guess, Brie, that you're talking about there. But for some reason, when I'm reading that, I'm feeling like it takes away from the stakes of the mystery.
Okay.
And it just like, it's trying to be two things at once. And
it doesn't work.
For me as a reader, it just doesn't seem to work. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've noticed that if you have, for me, again, I'm not throwing rocks at the genre or anything, that if there's sexy in the mystery book, it takes a real tricky and talented balance by the author to get the pacing and the timing right for each moment when it comes to mystery and for sexy time.
Yeah. Okay. See, I've heard some romance readers say that like they don't read romantic suspense because if they wanted to read a mystery or whatever, they'd just read a thriller. And I kind of feel like, okay, well then you should just read an intrigue. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay,
Yeah.
if you're not a category reader or whatever, you have no idea what we're talking about. If you're willing to give it a try, then intrigue is definitely a line that you should be picking up because it is more.
I think I hear what Erin's saying, and what I would agree with is it does take a skilled author to straddle the line between the romance and the suspense.
Mm-hmm.
I think because I've been one of those readers that have said that, and I think that's not why I stopped. I just sort of gravitated towards something else because
Mm-hmm.
I'm a mood reader and just never went back. But what I have noticed with even when it doesn't fall under the title of the subgenre of romantic suspense, when I see authors trying to add that element in it, it's done really badly a lot of the times. So I've been one of those people where if I want spy, I'll just go to like a Barry Eisler who used to work for the CIA but is now an author,
Yeah.
and go to the good stuff, as opposed to this person who is a great romance author but knows nothing about writing suspense or mystery, and is trying it and is doing it badly. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've read books where the author has tried to inject elements of suspense and mystery. And, one of the last ones I read, the woman had to go on the run, and she texted her friend to say, can you send me the address of the secret cabin that you have in the woods? And I've been like, well, my 16-year-old nephew knows that the first thing you do is you ditch your cell phone and you get a burner. You don't use your own phone, right? And so you start, and the thing that happens with the more thrillers and the more mystery that you read is the more you understand about that world and what you do and what you don't do when you go on the run. And when you see things like that, then you go, but that's not the way that would happen, even though I've never held a gun to somebody's head. I know. I've learned that you always you give, a bubble, because, the other person can remove that gun from your head. Like, you pick up these really odd pieces of information that about, that and then you see things like somebody texting their best friend telling me, send me the location of the secret cabin, going, no.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
So it is a difficult line to walk. Not a lot of romance authors can do it really well. The ones that do it well, though, are great at it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Do y'all think too, like with it being category and with there being like, word count and page length, I'm assuming for our writers that makes it it's obviously it is a skill that you have to make it work, but I'm assuming that makes it a little bit more difficult as well.
Oh, it has to. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's the one that I read. It was an old intro. Well, I say old, but it's from 2010. There was sex on the page, and it's an intrigue, and I'm like, hold up, I don't think
Yeah.
intrigue does this anymore. So
You
was
found a
like,
diamond in the rough.
right. I was chatting, like I was talking with intrigue writer Denise Wheatley. Shout out to her, and I told her about it, and she was like, "What? They had sex on the page?" And I was like, "Yes."
Wow.
Like, it was like one scene, and it was pretty it wasn't glossed over. It wasn't fade to black. Like, it was an actual sex scene. And I'm like, in an intrigue, okay, this is interesting.
See, I wish I had known that. When I read an intrigue a couple of months ago, I thought I was getting romantic suspense. I didn't know that there was a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one kiss at the end, and I went, what?
Did I miss a chapter somewhere?
I just spent 230 pages.
And this is what intrigue is essentially a sweet romance, right?
Yeah, right.
I guess if it is there, it's usually fade to black.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not there often because it's very suspenseful. So there's just like really no time.
Yeah, good to know.
Yeah, it's not going to be there, Christina. But see, okay, so one thing that Christina, do you read paranormal at all?
I do. Do.
See, I can do like, okay, I think before I even read Nocturne, my first introduction to this would be Christine Feehan, where it was like romantic suspense, some paranormal, and like that combination works really well for me. So I'm like, why can I do that easier than just picking up a romantic suspense?
I think the suspense adds an element of adrenaline that you may or may not get with paranormal. That's my observation, that there isn't with suspense. There's you're working. There normally is a time factor involved in suspense. The crime has to be solved before or by the time, right? The killer has to be found in this period of time because of, X. And so you're always sort of trying to beat the clock in romantic suspense, I find. I can't think of any romantic suspense that I've ever read where they weren't against the clock, which only adds to the adrenaline.
Yeah.
But paranormal doesn't need that.
No,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's an action element in most paranormals as well that is a different kind of excitement for the reader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, and then you can add in the element of, this author's probably created their own lore that you're invested in, depending on what the characters are, and you're kind of just focused and kind of in for it for all of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so
World
weird. I'm
building.
like, I've been really trying to like psychoanalyze myself, you guys. Like, why am I so like I said so like a couple of months ago, I kind of became obsessed with this show called Disappeared. Like, there's some true crime that I can get into, and when I do, I become a little obsessed, but then I get scared. And it was all about people who just essentially like walk off the face of the earth, like go to the beach and you never seen them again, or there's camera footage of them walking downtown and you never see them again.
Right.
And I can become really invested in that, but then like 10 episodes in, I'm like, I go places by myself all the time. Why am I watching this? I'm like, nope, not for me. I can't do it. So I have to take like a year-long break before I watch another episode. I used to joke with Sarah all the time. Like, her ideal Sunday is knitting and watching CSI. And I'm like, how do you sleep at night? And she's like, very well, because I know all the bad guys are caught. And I'm like, that makes sense to a romantic suspense lover. But to me, I'm like, I can't do it. I'm too anxious. I'm too scared.
Well, I'm a worst case scenario person. Like, I want to know what you would do if the worst case scenario had to happen or happened. So
yeah.
I think it gives you a false sense of, like I said, people who read thrillers and especially the spy ones, you pick up all these odd bits of information that you feel prepared. It's a false sense of being prepared, because if somebody actually pulled a gun in a bank, you too would be hiding behind the desk. But you think having a conversation with friends, you think you would know what to do based on what you picked up. So
yeah,
it does. I guess there's that enjoyment too, right?
I did read before, not for this episode, but I did try out a love inspired suspense on audio, because apparently they have a lot of those on audiobook on the library app. So I was like, let me try one out. And I was like, it's interesting when you also add in the faith element. It made it, I mean, they did not shy away from the suspense. So I got to give them that, and they are just really just essentially like characters of faith. So it's like, talks of prayer and stuff like that. It wasn't over the top. I was imagining them being like, okay, in a really dangerous situation and being like, we have to pray and get out of this. And I'd be like, no, you need to do something. It wasn't that, but there was something cozy about it, I think, because it was like, the hero was like a canine handler. And I was like, I don't know why this is cozy, but there's something cozy about it. So that it took a little bit of the sting off. But when I finished that book, I asked myself, you love cozy mysteries. Why are you struggling with this?
Yeah. I was thinking about that as well. And, to bring up Julianne Lindsay again, she has several cozy mystery series that she's written they're all at least 3 books. So a trilogy at least. And I think for me, with those ones, you actually get those sweet moments, but you have to get them across, the whole collection of books. But it's enough time with, our characters to actually feel that connection and that romantic element between them, as well as having this mystery and, amateur sleuthing and everything
Yeah.
along with that.
Okay, so Christina, as someone who's read it, for a long time, when you pick one up, you're in it for what? Are you in it for the romance, or are you in it for the suspense?
I'm in it for both.
You're in it for both. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you
am.
finish that intrigue and you're like, I got a kiss at the end, did you feel fulfilled in the romance department?
I felt cheated.
Okay.
I felt duped a little bit. Because I went in for both and I felt like I only got one.
That's what I really have had a lot of thoughts about, and I'm so happy that we're having this conversation, because I mean, if you are a romantic suspense lover and you're listening to this, reach out to us and tell us, like, kind of what you're in it for, what you enjoy about it. But I've had a lot of thoughts about that. Like, it's almost like I don't want to think that you have to choose, because I know that there are authors that can do both and do them well, right? Like, romantic suspense is a genre that's been around for a long time. You think of like old Phyllis Whitney's; those were romantic suspense novels,
Yeah.
So it's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like you, Christina, the one that I read, I definitely felt cheated. However, if I was in it for the suspense, it was a wonderful novel. It was great.
Right. Yeah, I need that romantic element. I need romance in everything, and so if I don't get it, then I feel it's not worth my time. Like I said, the Walking Dead example, I mean, that was a joke, but I really did stop watching once they killed Beth off, because for me, if there isn't that connection, then I have a hard time sitting through it. So
Yeah.
I need more. I need that romantic element. And the romance, to me, it isn't just about, two people kissing, but it's that connection. And that's why I like romantic suspense and the post-apocalyptic suspense and the dystopian suspense. I like that high stakes that forces the two people together. And so you don't need enemies to lovers in romantic suspense, right? Because the thing that they're fighting or running from or trying to escape is the enemy, right? And these two are forced to work together and come together, and through that, the connection is, I think it's heightened under those circumstances.
But see, and I hear that, and I'm like, okay, I totally agree with that. And then I think, like, if we're in some traumatic situation, you're like, if you're in The Walking Dead, right? You're like, oh, Daryl's kind of hot, when in normal times, you wouldn't give Daryl a second thought, even though we all love Daryl. Shout out to Daryl. He's like, I think everybody's
or maybe you would.
Right. So it's like, I need that something that makes me feel like when they get out of this dangerous situation, they would stay together. It's not just, we were in the thick of this situation and we were the only two that had each other's back, and that kind of like made this connection. But like, okay, now life's gone back to normal. I want to feel like they're going to stay together. So I need like that something else, you guys.
Yeah, more than just the trauma bond, right?
Yes. Okay, Christina, what did you read? Let's talk about what we actually read here.
I actually read 3, because I read 1 thinking, okay, I'm going to do my homework and I'm going to read 1 for this month. And then I read 3 back to back. So
perfect. Okay.
I really do like them. What was the first one I read? It was His to Protect by Sharon C. Cooper.
Oh, okay.
And I think that came out last year.
I think it was last year too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to get that one from the library and somebody had it.
And this one, what was this one? She witnessed a bank robbery. And so she has to get a bodyguard, and, bodyguard, I mean, come on, right?
Oh, yeah.
She, of course, can't stay in her house. She has to move in with him for him to protect her. And I mean, what could be better, right? So I liked it. I mean, can it compare? Can the suspense hold up on its own to a straight thriller or mystery? I don't think it can, but I think that's more that it's a category and it has to be a certain number of pages. But it was great. And I mean, and it was so good that I went on to read another one right afterwards.
Okay, what'd you read next?
Then I read Rancher's High Stake Rescue by Beth Cornelison. And this
Is that a romantic suspense?
It is. It came out in 2016.
Okay, it's an older one. I was like, oh, that sounds like a love-inspired suspense.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah, this is 2016. And so there is a woman, she's in advertising. She goes to this ranch, which has decided to convert itself or go into business at an additional line of business that would be a quote unquote adventure ranch where people could do things like zip lining and what did they do? What is it? Canoeing down the rapids and that whitewater rafting and that sort of thing. Yeah. So it starts off with the first group activity is zip lining, and the zip line breaks. He goes down first. He's fine, but the line is a little wobbly. She goes down after and it snaps just before she gets to the other side. So he has to climb down a cliff, get her, and then they can't get back to the other side. And now they're separated from the group. And the truck that was supposed to be left there for them to find their way back, somebody forgot to leave the truck. And so now they're stuck in the wilderness having to, go through this, basically an adventure, adventure race where now they've got to go down. They've got to get a canoe and they've got to travel. Then he gets mauled by a bear and, and she has to fight off the bear. And then a freak storm hits and they're caught in the rain and they're trudging through the woods. And so, they spend a week out there.
See, that sounds really good because it sounds really fast paced.
Yeah, that's exactly. Not your typical murder mystery.
Yeah. So that was one. And then the last one was Beauty and the Bodyguard by Lisa Childs.
Okay.
And this came out also in 2016. And this is about a woman. It's her wedding day. She's about to get married. And her father is a general in the military. And the chapel is stormed by a group of armed gunmen. And from there, the entire book is set in the chapel where her ex-boyfriend shows up from the dead. They all thought he was dead, but he's actually alive, and he shows up.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
And he's still in love with her.
Oh my god!
So he's sneaking around trying to take out these bad guys one by one.
Oh my gosh. The more bonkers, the better.
I tell you. It can never get too bonkers in romantic suspense, which is probably why I like it as well. Like if anything's going to go wrong, it's going to happen in romantic suspense, right? The car's never going to be where somebody left it. You're never going to end up with the supplies you thought you packed at the beginning. There's going to be somebody's coming back from the dead. I mean, that's guaranteed.
In the church. He's going to show up in the church. Right. Okay.
And the more protection, the more bodily protection you have, the better. So
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I love that you read 3. Thank you.
Yes, I love this.
Aaron, what did you read?
Okay, so the first one I read was Catching the Carling Lake Killer by K.D. Richards, and that was The Intrigue. And that comes out next month, I think. You can get it on the Harlequin website next month. I was lucky enough that K.D. sent me a copy, and I actually got 2 copies of this in the mail, but so someone else sent me one too. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
But this is a hotshot journalist is returning to her hometown to take on a role as the small town reporter, but she also witnessed a murder by a serial killer that stalked the town when she was 13, I believe. And her mother didn't believe her when she told her what she saw. So she had spent her life thinking, oh, was I crazy or not? But now the serial killer has struck again 20 years later and has left his calling card. And our local town sheriff has to track things down. But the thing I liked about this one is they were in our heroine and hero were in a friends with benefits relationship before the book starts. And, being the investigative reporter and the town sheriff and like,
it's the sheriff's romance.
Mm-hmm.
I loved him in book 1. Okay. Thank God. Okay. Keep going.
And and it's really good because they're trying to solve this crime. He's trying to keep her safe. She's trying to keep her secret because she's worried that people will be upset about her for being quiet. And they're like both, looking each other up and down, like, giving each other the sexy eyes the whole time, trying to be sly about it the whole way through. No, definitely a great read there. And I haven't finished it yet. I'm more than halfway through it, but The Texas Sheriff's Deadly Mission by Karen Whitten. This one is a romantic suspense, and it has to do with our hero, his best friend who is in hospice care with a terminal illness. His sister went missing, and so he's trying to find his friend's little sister. And the small town sheriff is our heroine, actually. And she's trying to deal with some killings that have happened recently. So we've got a serial killer on the loose, and we've got a missing person. And I haven't quite figured out where they're connected yet, but it's got some elements that I like about it. I'm not reading it as fast as the intrigue, but I do love this cover because, a romantic suspense, it's usually the guy holding the woman in some kind of protective way or holding her back, something like that. This one has our heroine sheriff standing in front of the hero, and she has his hand on his chest, and it's kind of a romantic touch, but it's also kind of a, sir, step back and let the professionals handle this, please.
Right. So I read, it's called Stranger in a Small Town. It's by Carrie Connor. Very much from the title. There you go. Stranger in a Small Town. It's from May of 2010. It's intrigue like 1207, but it was really, like I said, if you're in it for the suspense, I think structurally and everything, this novel is fantastic. If you're really wanting something, if you're in it for the romance, you'll have to hit me up later when you finish it and let me know. But our heroine is Maggie, and she is in this small town. I guess it's one of them situations, as kids, you see a house and you fall in love with it and you're like, that's my house kind of thing. Well, she has actually bought like a house that she fell in love with, I guess, during her younger years. And she wants to renovate it and sell it. I guess that's the plan. And the townspeople are total jerks to her. They do not want anybody living in that house. They don't want her to renovate it. They don't want her to sell it. It's one of those, don't touch it. We don't want to talk about it. And as long as you're here, we're going to treat you like crap because we don't want anything to do with that house. And she doesn't understand why. And so the meet cute is actually like, so it starts off, she's like in the house, it's like 2:00 in the morning, and she hears noises. And so this is the first book in this miniseries Intrigue did called The Shivers. So it's kind of like a little creepy-ish at the same time. So she hears these noises, and as a reader, you're like, is the house haunted? But she knows, like, I guess people have already kind of vandalized it before. So she's like, it's probably somebody here to vandalize it. Like, they're really trying to get her out of this house. So the meet cute is like her and the hero. The hero shows up at like 2:00 in the morning asking for a job. And it doesn't really hit her like till later on that, not that she hasn't like posted, that she needs help renovating, but there was something specific that like, she's like, I didn't put that in there kind of thing. So you as a reader are like, okay, what's his connection to this place? Well, yeah, he, come to find out, like, you learn pretty quickly that he grew up there and there was a murder in the house. It was his parents. He blames himself, even though he was a kid at the time. But he doesn't let her in on this. So he, in a way, is like helping her renovate it. But at the same time, he's kind of on the townspeople side of like, nobody needs to live here. So like also trying to persuade her to not sell it at the same time. So it's a lot going on. And then at the end, like, there's a romance and they end up together. But, people are like, somebody tries to set fire to it. There's just, I think that like she really captured like the whole everybody knows everybody in a small town, and like something bad happened. People still remember it. And they don't want, there are people that don't want the secrets to come out and the truth to come out about what actually happened to these kids' parents. Because there were like 4 boys, and they all ended up being shipped off somewhere else, and they lost their parents. And yeah, like, so I don't know, it was really good. But when I finished it, I was like, man, there's like nothing. I don't know if I would believe these two would be together like a year from a year from now after this. But I mean, if you're in it for the suspense, I was like, man, it was fantastic. So I don't know. Really good read.
Awesome. Well, I think this was a successful books club.
I think
despite
so too.
Us not being super into everything we read, at least some of us. We had a really great discussion. I feel like that we covered a lot of good topics.
I think that my thing is, because like besides like, KD Richards was my first intrigue author. With Pursuit of the Truth. That's the reason why the podcast is the podcast, because of that freaking book. It's so good. But I do think if there's a way and I wish Intrigue would like, look into maybe doing this again. But if there is something kind of not necessarily paranormal-ish, but something creepy-ish about it as well, I can usually get into it. So like one of my favorite intrigue series is by Jana DeLeon. It's the Mystere Parish series. The first book is called The Reckoning. The Vanishing is book 2, and then The Awakening is book 3. And they're set in the bayou of New Orleans. So I mean, like Louisiana. So that already comes with like its own like local lore and kind of creepiness. You think of the swamps. And she really like dives into that. And like you're getting scenes from the bad guy as well. Like you see them like camping out, looking at the main characters whose chapter you just read. It's like, I really, really loved that. So I think it's a personal preference, but like if we could also get a balance of like a little bit of creepiness also, I think it would really work for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see that. There are some early Nora Roberts where she did that. She added a lot of that creepiness into her romantic suspense. So yeah, there's definitely a market out there for it a lot. Those are some of her most popular books.
Yeah. See, I'm gonna have to go back.
Well, and if special edition can have ghosts, I don't see why Intrigue can't, right?
Yeah,
right. I mean, it was very ghost light, but still. Sanithia's books, like,
yeah.
Let's just do it. Take more chances.
Well, this has been a great discussion. Christina, thank you so much for joining us in our books club this month. It was really great to have you.
It was great. It was fun to talk about these books.